Ask Reddit. What stranger will you never forget? When I was in elementary school, I fell through ice. A man who was walking his dog saw me fall and rushed to the shore. I frantically swam back to the shore. I was only about 5 meters into the pond, so it wasn't a long way, but it took some with soaked winter clothes. When I reached the shore, the man pulled me up by my jacket. It would have been difficult to get up, as there was a steep incline. I didn't thank him, because I was in shock, but I bet he knows I was grateful, and 20 years later I still hope I would have thanked him. I was doing tech support and my customer was so happy with my service she offered to marry me to her daughter. I politely declined. I was waiting for my appointment with an optometrist when an old Haitian man walked in with the grocery bags. Thai receptionist knew him, so he walked up to me and proceeded to ask me riddles. When I finally got the answer to one, he reached into his bag and gave me a Snickers, then left. To this day I'm really curious as to what would motivate a man to become a wholesome riddler. The foreign exchange student and his parents who walked past my park bench on campus and dropped his passport. I chased after them to return it, and his mom started screaming at me in broken English like, "Why you have his papers? Why you steal his papers?" While the kid and his father looked like they were going to die from embarrassment. The gentleman in a business suit handing me his umbrella in the middle of a downpour. We just were passing each other on the sidewalk. Our eyes met and he just handed over the umbrella with a "Here ya go." Never saw him ago. An Irish guy, not in Ireland, who spoke with such a strong accent that I couldn't make out a single word. To this day I question whether it was just a prank. I was driving down south with my girlfriend. We have a blowout, so I put on the donut. The donut blows out while we're exiting the very next exit. So there we are, maybe 19 and at least 100 miles from anyone we know, at a gas station in the middle of nowhere. I'm thinking on what to do next, and probably looked like there was something wrong, so this older man offered to help. He drives me 20 or so minutes to a junkyard to get a cheap tire. Then he puts the tires on the rim with no more than a pry bar and some soapy water. Had a compressor on his truck, so he aired it up and I put it on, and we went on our way. There are a few. The biggest one was when I was homeless and asked a lady for the time. She told me and asked if I wanted to share her sandwich and the paper. She was the first person to treat me like a person, like I was worth something in years. I never got her name, but I will remember her fondly for the rest of my life. I know that she'll never, ever know what a difference she made in my life. Just that one simple thing she did and the humanity she showed me changed my life. I got sober just a few days later and completely turned my life around. One person, one smile, one kindness that you may never think of again in your life can change someone else's life beyond measure. I was at a pool bar at a resort in Jamaica. A British lady next to me asked me the most random question, which turned into a nearly 3-hour conversation. The question, "What is a redneck?" It was a lot more difficult to explain than I thought it would be. I didn't realize that was an unknown concept to a lot of Brits. I was drunk on my front porch one night. Me and a couple of friends were shooting the shit. I lived in a rough neighborhood at the time. Lot of homeless people, but most of them were decent people just down on their luck. Anyway, I see a homeless guy walking by my house and I holler out to him, "Yo man, you want a beer?" And he's like, "Man, hell yeah, thank you." So he comes up into the yard. I give him a beer and an extra one for the road. He starts going on about how he misses his son and how he never gets to see him anymore. We all sit and listen to him. He starts crying and says he bought his kid a bag of brand new Hanes socks and his mom wouldn't let him have them. Now I don't know what he did to deserve such treatment. Maybe he's a total son of a bitch and deserves to be where he is. Maybe not. I have no idea, but what I do know is, whatever his past, he was having a very human moment at the time and he was super thankful, not just for the beer, but that me and my friends were listening and talking with him, just letting him vent. Then he tries to give me the pack of socks he bought for his kid, which I vehemently refused. I was like, "Man, you keep him. Your feet might get cold out there." But he wasn't hearing it. I mean, he refused to keep them. He flat out insisted that I take them. Eventually it became obvious he wasn't gonna take no for an answer and he wore me down and I accepted them. I guess he didn't need the reminder. He moved on and the party vibe was completely gone. We all just went inside and crashed. I used to walk to school at around 7:30 a.m. every morning during high school. Each morning through 9th and 10th grade, I used to pass an old Asian man in a sweater and sweatpants. He used to jog every morning, and we would always briefly see each other at the exact same time. Eventually we were familiar with each other and we would exchange good mornings and a smile, and carry on. The last time I saw him was at a supermarket, and it had been quite a while since I had seen him during my walks to school. When we made eye contact, he got so happy and smiled and waved and introduced me to his wife. She was just as kind as he was. As I continued my walks in the morning until graduation, I always hoped to run into him again and see how he had been. I guess I grew attached to him or something. Unfortunately, I never saw him again after that, and from time to time he still crosses my mind. I hope he's okay. He used to be the highlight of my days when no one else could smile at me. I volunteer at a suicide hotline. Some guy, Bob, called in and we started talking about his home situation. Nothing absolutely horrendous. But he felt trapped and stressed and felt like he didn't have options. When people use language like that, our training says we should ask if they are thinking of suicide. Many volunteers have trouble with this, but if you mention suicide to someone who is not suicidal, it doesn't make them more suicidal. They just correct you and say no. I feel more like this, so I asked Bob, you're using a lot of language that people use when they're thinking of suicide. Are you thinking of suicide? There was a pause, and then a huge wail. I could hear so much pain in his voice. I listened to him cry for at least 5 minutes. I've talked to people who had suicidal ideation before. It would be better if I were dead kind of thinking, but with no plan. Bob said yes, he was considering suicide, and we talked it out a bit more. After the pause and wail, that was the most concerned I've ever been for a human being outside my family. This wasn't just talking. I felt like he had already made up his mind about it, which was so scary. I only know what he told me. I know he was in his car parked somewhere. I know we got a few short laughs out of each other and we made some plans for him. Plans are important because it gives you a sense that if he has something to do, to plan for, he can't commit suicide. Anyway, he truly is a stranger. I don't know his real name or what he looks like. I just know his story, and I know that he was in immense pain that day. He had a particular kind of accent, and whenever I meet someone with that same accent, I think of him and hope he's okay. The lady who told me I looked great in blue, and that it was clearly my color. To this day, if I'm deciding between shirts to buy or wear, I'll go with blue. That compliment was about 15 years ago at least. When I was super overweight, I was just starting to work out somewhat regularly. Being morbidly obese at the gym is terrible. I have never felt more eyes on me before in my life. I was on a treadmill, grinding out some inclined walk light jogging, and a super fit girl got on the machine next to me. This was all pre-COVID. She did a short warm-up, and before she got off the treadmill she turned to me and gave me a high five and told me to keep it up. It was so encouraging to have that support. When I was used to getting stared at by everyone else in the gym, her small, kind gesture went a long way. My lost wallet was returned in the mail. The anonymous stranger sent it back at their own expense. $9.75 postage, with all the money, credit cards, driver's license, and other items intact. Nothing was missing. A note enclosed read, "Please do something kind for a stranger whenever you have the opportunity." Took a train to NYC by myself for the first time. I was 18. Second time to NYC. First time ever on a train. I told the kiosk lady that I'd never been on a train before and asked if she might give me a quick rundown of what to do. Another train station employee was nearby and was so interested and amused that I was taking a train for the first time and was alone. He walked me through what to do, down to the smallest detail. No judgment, no meanness. He was just a guy with a silly disposition, delighting in a young person's naivety, breaking up the doldrums of his week. I aspire to be that way when people ask me for help. Thanks, Frank P. You were a peach. When I was a broke-ass 18-year-old trying to make ends meet, I had a side hustle providing IT support for households, like a Geek Squad sort of thing. In practice, I would mostly set up computers for elderly people and the tech illiterate, and teach them how to use them, or get them out of technical binds. usually with printers, by Googling on their behalf. This elderly Korean gentleman hired me to set up his new computer for him. I spent an hour setting it up and teaching him how to use it, and 2 more hours eating a wonderful lunch with the man and his wife. He wouldn't accept my invoice for just the first hour. Instead, he paid me 3 times my hourly rate for all 3 hours, and asked me to come back to train him the next week. Over the course of about a month I came back 4 times, worked with him, had a lovely meal, and he would tell me about his family and his kids. He was so proud of his daughter, who was about to finish her residency and become a pediatrician. By the end of the month he was pretty comfortable on the PC, and I thanked him profusely for how kind he was and how ridiculously he'd overpaid me. He told me I reminded him of his son, who was estranged for some reason. I didn't press, and that he hoped somewhere out there somebody was being kind to his son, and sharing a home-cooked meal with him. I don't know why, but more than 10 years later I can't think of that guy without tearing up. I hope everything turned out well for him. My dad is a truck driver. At the time he was probably about 55, 56. It was a long time ago, I can't remember, and we were waiting for a train to pass. So there was then this black guy that looked rather homeless, and he knocked on the glass of our truck and he said something along the lines of, "Can I give you something for your grandson?" And pulls out this model freight train. My dad insisted on giving him $20, but the guy refused, saying, "I am just trying to make people happy." In college, I was dating a girl. I really loved her, but I realized that we were incompatible and we had to break up. So I downed a handle of vodka by myself in my dorm. I was drunk as F, but still feeling shitty, so I decided to head to the bars and drink some more. I actually don't remember if I made it there or not, but I remember getting off the bus from having come from the bars and was too wasted to continue the relatively short walk to my dorm. I decided to just lay down where I was at, which was quite literally the gutter next to the railing. Luckily it was an empty gutter, but a gutter nonetheless. This complete bro dude comes by and sees me laying in the gutter and helps me up. He helps me walk back to my dorm, and on the struggle there he asks me what's wrong. I explained the situation. I don't remember much of anything from the conversation, but I do remember him saying something to the effect of, "Bro, your problems aren't gonna be solved at the bottom of a bottle." My son was a week old, and had to go to the doctor. I had severe early onset postpartum depression, and I hadn't slept more than an hour at a time since his birth. I locked my keys, phone, and son in the car. This incredibly wonderful older couple calmed me down, called CAA, parked beside my car and sat with me until the tow truck came and unlocked the car. The tow driver refused payment. I will never forget those 3 people. I was on a tram and I didn't have a ticket, and the ticket inspectors came on. I got asked to have my ticket seen and I said I couldn't find it on me, and he said he'll come back so I can look for it. There was a stranger sat on the seat behind me who had a ticket. He gave it to me and he got off at the next stop. Guy gave me his ticket so I wouldn't be issued a fine. Was on a solo trip to Amsterdam last year, partying it up as one does. Was at a bar having a few drinks, and a gorgeous British woman a seat or 2 over from me, mid-20s, grabs my arm. I'm a very gay-looking man, by the way, and starts going on about how good it is to see me. I got the hint and noticed an older guy bothering her and her friend. Played along with them as their long-lost BFF until he left. We ended up spending the rest of the night bar crawling and getting trashed together, having the best time. I'll never forget you, B. I was in the laundry with my dog and an old man with his dog approached. Our pets met and the man said, "When Jesus said love your neighbor as you love yourself." Only the dogs understood it. After that we had a small chat. Then he left and I have never seen him again. I will never forget that man. A little old Jamaican man came into work and gave me a rosary. He doesn't know me, but he told me he thought I could do with his prayers. I'm agnostic, but I put that rosary on my name badge, and when times are hard and customers are abusive I play with it. It doesn't remind me that God is watching over me, but it does remind me that there is some good left in humanity. I was walking on the street and a person came to me and said if I had any money. I gave him some. He looked at the money, told me it was sinful, and returned it to me. It was really weird. The money was my hard-earned money. A fine young man on the bus I took to Orlando, so sexy, and we started talking as we waited for the last long leg to Orlando. We talked in line as we got on the bus, and sat next to each other the whole time, just talking and even flirting a bit. He was funny and thoughtful, but we knew we were just passing the time. Still, we talked so candidly during those last few hours that it made a real impression on me. We didn't exchange numbers or anything, but we both wished each other the best as he got off the stop before mine. I don't even remember his name and probably wouldn't know him if I saw him, but I remember the feeling of talking with him and, weirdly enough, even miss him. Hope he's alright. I was by myself in a restaurant bathroom with my screaming newborn baby. As his cries intensified, I started to crumble knowing that we somehow had to walk all the way through the massive restaurant as the bathroom was tucked away in the back. A woman close to my age walked in. I apologized for the crying, and she immediately smiled and responded with "Don't even worry about it." On her way out, she walked up to me and my baby and asked if this was my first. I responded with a yes. She was not a mom herself, but immediately became empathetic to my situation. After a few minutes of conversation, I told her that I was nervous about walking my crying baby through the busy restaurant. She looked at me and said, "Let's get you out of here." She then opened the door and walked behind me, softly rooting me on all the way back to my table. She had no idea how much I needed her in that moment, and I'm forever grateful. A translator I met in Iraq. He had worked with the Red Cross through the Balkan Wars of the 90s, and had been taken prisoner half a dozen times. The last time, he was beaten so badly that the nerve damage cost him the use of his right arm. It was 90% immobile. After 10 years without the use of his right arm, a surgeon offered to operate on him, with the understanding that if he failed, they would just amputate. So he went under the knife, not knowing if he would wake up with a working arm, or a stump. After 5 years of physical therapy, learning how to use his arm again, he signed up to work as a translator in the war in Iraq, because he saw how many innocent Iraqis were being killed by American forces due to the communications barrier. When I met him, he had been there for 3 years, while his wife and 2 kids were in America. I always try to be a good person, but I know I'll never be as good as that. I was in my freshman year of college, and while alone in my dorm room, a light fixture fell on my head, giving me a concussion and a major gash. After being taken to the hospital and getting 10 staples in the scalp and simultaneously being diagnosed with a raging UTI, I was dumped in the parking lot with glass in my hair and blood covering my face and 15 miles away from the campus at 2 a.m. This was before Uber, and I didn't know who I could call to help me. A female cop drove by and offered to take me back to campus. Along the way, she stopped at a CVS and paid for my prescriptions out of her own pocket. Once back at campus, she made sure I got back to my room and let my RA know what had happened and to keep an eye on me. I truly don't know what I would have done without her. I was freshly 17, new to the area. It was very rural. I didn't have my wallet, and I was bleeding and concussed. I will forever be grateful for her help. One day I was trying to park at the store and a lady was crossing in front of me in the lot. I was waiting patiently and she shot me a dirty look and yelled something like, "What's your problem, asshole?" I proceeded to return the profanities with some FUs and other goodies. I went into the store steaming and proceeded to do my shopping. When I came out, I had all but forgotten about the lady, but as I drove away, there she was. Something came over me and I pulled up to her and said something like, "I'm sorry for yelling and cursing at you. I don't even know you. Who knows? We could have a lot in common or even be friends." Her face transformed in front of me. It went from twisted up angry to soft and friendly. She apologized immediately and in the most genuine way, told me to have a good day. This is the day I really learned positivity and love is really powerful and the type of energy I want in my life. I know I sound like a little softy, but that was a big experience for me and I'm grateful for her. P.S. I live in a third world country and at that time we didn't have most of the things the U.S. had. I was 19, now 28. 2 months after I left my a-hole parents, it was hard but not to the point I regretted my decision. Went to nearby store to stock up on ramen cups and maybe a can of beer after 5 days of pulling weeds and mowing lawns. A third of my clients were Karens, but I really couldn't complain. Cashier stares at me, and I assumed he was thinking if I was gonna steal because of what I was wearing. A beanie, a ragged jacket, sweatpants, a big bag and Crocs. "Did you run away?" I stopped putting things in my basket to look at him. "What?" I asked in confusion. I was too surprised to say anything else. LOL. Your bag. I always see those bags with runaway kids. In fact, you're my 23rd runaway kid that I've met, and I'm not counting those that are under the age of 9. It made even more surprised. I was 19. I only finished high school. I always thought runaway kids were at least near the same age as me. Didn't know there were kids under 9 that had to run away. He shrugs and reckoned me to come over. By the looks of it, you're already over the legal age to drink. I have an auntie who has a restaurant. I can drive you there and I can ask her for you to be a waitress. He was sus. How he was helping someone he just met. But at the time, at my age and at my mental health capabilities, I just said fuck it. If I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die trying. Went with him and I got a small job till I was able to start up an art business. Got commissions and everything started going brighter. I'm not in contact with the cashier anymore after moving to my own apartment. Later a 3-story house. But I still am with the auntie and 3 of my co-workers, who were runaway kids as well. 17, 15, 12 respectively. All ran away because of abuse. Not the brightest moment or decision in my life, but probably one of the most funniest. I wasn't willing to die by suicide, but I was willing to die by kidnapping LMAO. Thank you for watching. Daily uploads.